Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, a 20-year design flaw in Windows has finally been fixed by Microsoft after a year, and you won't believe how much code changes they had to make. Forbes.com gets compromised, and then we'll take a look at Facebook's new threat exchange platform and why it just might be a great idea. And then it's a great big batch of your questions, our answers, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 201 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on February 12th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining me every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Alan. And I have to give right out at the top of the show a big thank you to you. You saved my butt last week so bad. It was like okay. So we pre-recorded the Linux Action Show, last week's Linux Action Show, the one that just aired. And I was doing some hard drive cleanup like I do and deleted the pre-recording of the episode. And I didn't realize it till Friday before Linux Action Show was supposed to come out. And so I was like, Alan, is there any chance that Scale Engine has a backup of our video stream from that Sunday, which at that point was 5-6 days ago, right? And you did. You did.
Well, yeah, in particular, we had set up our automatic hourly recording system because we're working on launching a new feature, and you're basically our dummy.
Hey, I don't mind testing for you because it saved my bacon, Alan. It saved my bacon. I love that. Scale Engine. Everybody go to scaleengine.com and check it out if you have some video streaming needs or content hosting needs. Ooh, boy, saved me. I've just got to say. Okay, Alan. Well, we've talked a lot over the last 6 months about these vulnerabilities in things like Linux and open source and Unix software systems that people have been, these have been around for years. Like I'm thinking right now of like shell shock, for example, right? This is horrible. These vulnerabilities, nobody catches them. Well, turns out it's not just the Linux and Unixes that have this problem.
Yeah, well, in particular, so there's Microsoft, in this week's Patch Tuesday, had 9 security bulletins which address 56 different vulnerabilities in Windows, Office, Internet Explorer, and their server software, and so on. But the biggest two are MS-15-011 and 014. And what makes these vulnerabilities kind of special is they're not the same as shell shock and so on, where it was a mistake in the code, where it was supposed to work, but because of a mistake in the code, it caused a vulnerability. In this particular case, this was a design flaw in the way Windows works. So the entire thing is...
It's the problem. And it affects anybody using Active Directory, so it's not just like all Windows, though. You have to be using Active Directory, but that's a ton of Windows computers.
If you have a corporate network and it has a domain, which is like every corporate network, then yes.
Yeah.
And so... this vulnerability was reported to Microsoft in January of 2014.
I'm sorry, what?
But it took them 13 months to fix it because they had to re-engineer the entire way the Active Directory system works. They had to invent new features to solve the problem.
No.
Because it wasn't just a bug in the code that could just be fixed.
So it's literally a design flaw.
Yeah, it was a design flaw in the way Active Directory works altogether. And more, it was just the way the world has changed since when they built Active Directory back for Windows NT 4.
Yeah. It debuted in Windows 2000.
No, well, Active Directory, yes. But the group policies, the feature that actually has a problem,
group
technically
policy.
came from NT 4.
Yep.
It's been around that long. And back then, you kind of had the inside my network and outside my network.
Yes, very much
everything inside was trusted and everything outside wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, that's not really the case anymore. Plus, people travel and connect via the internet back to the office now, which wasn't really a thing before.
Right. Yeah. Much more
if somebody did connect back to the office, they dialed up to a server at the office where you had a big multi-line phone line and they dialed into Citrix or something.
Yeah, or PC Anywhere or whatever what a stupid system it was. Yeah.
The new, and then they had to build these new features, and then they have to test them and do regression testing, and then be like, is this going to break some certain software configuration people are going to be using on Windows 7, or does it work on Windows 8.1?
When you're messing with Active Directory, you're literally going to mess with every computer in the organization that's attached to it, and that is a big change,
all over the place,
major change, So no wonder it took them about a year to work on it?
It was 13 months between when it was reported and when they finally pushed out the fix last Tuesday.
Wow.
So most corporate network security features in Windows are actually deployed via group policies, right? So, your Windows computer has a configuration, but when you join a domain and you log into it, it downloads this group policy object, which is basically just a registry hive that it then applies onto your computer over top of your local settings. And it changes a bunch of settings. Like you can use group policies to do stuff like take away the run button from the start menu.
Right.
Or make the control panel disappear. Or
you can even just whitelist so that only certain applications run.
Yeah.
You can do
say
things
only these applications can run, only these users can do this.
Disable
only this
USB devices. You can adjust the encryption the networking uses. I mean, all kinds of things.
I remember a big one was controlling the password hash that Windows XP used because the default one was the Windows 95 one. It was horrible. I remember back using Windows 95 in high school, they had a group policy that prevented you from using the run menu and a bunch of other stuff, but also changing the proxy settings in Internet Explorer was disabled because they forced you to go through their content filter that would block stuff, right? And so if you wanted to go to something that was blocked, you had this problem. So they disabled the run menu, the registry editor, and the proxy settings in Internet Explorer. But because it was Windows 95 and it wasn't actually a domain, right? They were doing like a work group or whatever. You could run group policy editor and then just re-enable the ability to run regedit. It was sad. So we worked around it. But anyway, so these settings get applied when you log into the computer. And that's where almost all the security settings and stuff you use on a corporate network come from. Yeah. So it's kind of a big thing.
Yeah, no kidding.
One of the group policies that was introduced a couple of years ago was what's called SMB signing. So this is when you're using, the Windows file sharing protocol to connect to a server to access files, or actually it's also used for basically everything in the Windows network. It has signing so that you can verify that the server is actually the right server. So it's kind of like, HTTPS with your certificates. You're making sure the server you're talking to is actually the real PayPal, not a fake one. So this is making sure you're talking to the real file server for your company, not a fake one. So group policy enables that as you log in. The problem is the bug MS15-014 allows an attacker to interfere with the application of the group policy by just messing with the network as you're downloading it, or a bunch of different things they can do that will cause the group policy not to apply to your computer. So they just make it so that they block Windows' ability to download the group policy, and so Windows continues without it.
Yeah.
Because Windows defaults to letting you do stuff rather than not. So now that the SMB feature is turned off because you didn't get the group policy forcing it, now when you try to run a trusted program from a network server, it actually connects to the bad guy's server and runs his program. Right? Because he can now pretend to be the real one.
Yeah, you can just bring a laptop in there, you get that set up, and you just start grabbing people's login sessions.
Right, and so they're talking about doing this in man in the middle, like people that are at a hotel and connecting back to work, or being on the LAN and doing ARP spoofing to take over the IP address of the server, and a bunch of different things you can do to be able to do that. Then there's MS15-011, which is related and has an interesting kind of recursive catch-22 kind of element to it. So during the process where Windows clients actually download the group policy from the domain controller, there's no authentication.
What?
Because it's not verifying the server you're downloading the group policy from, because it doesn't have the group policy that says verify the server. Because that's what you're downloading. Right? Yeah. And also, it doesn't, that's when it gets the list of servers to trust.
That makes sense, yeah. I didn't even think of that, of course.
And this is set by the group policy, so it has to download it first before it has the keys to check against and has the feature that forces it to check enabled. So as part of the group policy download, though, the client also runs a series of scripts from the domain controller, like login.cmd. Well, so if you can spoof being the server they're connecting to that, you can provide them your own different group policy that maybe actually reduces the default security and makes everything worse, right? So like if you have a Windows 7 install, it has certain security features enabled, but you have to disable those for interoperability with like Windows XP or something, or going back even further, I think. And so you could actually give them a group policy that opened them wide up, and they would trust it because they not told not to yet, right? And you can just stick any command you want in that login.cmd, and their computer's just going to run them every time they log in. So you can be like, download and install this malware. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just get this at your login session for you.
Yeah. So the malactor sitting in a man-in-the-middle position can replace the group policy with their own that affects the security of the machine and make the user run any commands they want and download any files they want from their malicious server and so on. So to solve this issue, the feature Microsoft's come up with is what they're calling mutual authentication and UNC hardening.
Yeah, okay, I heard about this.
Yeah. So the mutual authentication means that the client will verify the server that's giving it its group policy and vice versa, right? The domain controller won't give the group policy away to people that aren't in the domain, so somebody can't see what your group policy is.
Makes sense.
But this feature has to be enabled by group policy.
Oh, okay. What about now? I do not remember my Windows administration well enough, I guess, but there is also local policies on these machines, and couldn't you set some of these things as local policies so that way if the
probably, but are you going to go around and do that to every machine?
No, I'd rather do it at the domain level.
So the client must make one last insecure connection to the domain controller, at which point they will then, from then on, verify the domain controller and be fine. So basically, with this fix, Microsoft pushed out this feature. You install the fix, and then every machine as it logs in becomes secure.
So you got to at least go through it one more time.
Yeah, you have to run the gauntlet of possibly getting faked out one more time, and then you're okay.
And then what happens though for I've seen it. You got these straggler laptops. It's a loaner. It's been sitting on the shelf for 6 months. It hasn't logged in. Hasn't been booted. This happens all the time in shops. Would that then be vulnerable still?
It's also missing a bunch of the Windows updates probably. Yeah. Until it gets the update, it probably can't support this feature.
Right.
This feature is new. Yeah. So the client has to have installed the patch and then logged in and got the new policy. Right? And also, what about the question of a fresh installed Windows?
Yeah.
So you just installed Windows and you're going to connect it to the domain controller. Can you get faked out then?
Oh, right. Of course. Every version of... Yeah, they're all going to have this problem at the base install. Yeah. What a pain in the butt.
So maybe in your deployment image, you're going to have to use a local policy to turn this feature on for the first connection or something.
Yeah, build into the image.
The other big thing is that Microsoft is not going to patch this for Windows XP, Windows 2000, nor Windows Server 2000 and 2003.
Well, and 2003 still has months left of support.
I don't think so, no.
I thought it had like 5.
No, I might.
So. Okay, all right. Maybe so.
It might, but they're not patching it for Windows Server 2000.
Yeah, I know. And I the reason why that jumped out at me is because I remember reading, well, wait, what do you mean they're not patching it when it's still... I thought it still had 5 months of...
I thought we only have like 5 months before Windows 7 is out of support.
Yeah, maybe that's
it'll stop getting new features. It'll be in long-term support, so it'll still get security fixes, but not new features. So I think maybe that's what it was. Anyway,
you know what? I do remember where I read that now. I have it right here from Ars. They say when Ars Technica was covering it, they said that I can't. Yeah, Server 2003 will continue to support until the middle of July. So 2003 is supported until the middle of July, but they're still not going to patch it for this flaw. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I guess they just figured it's too much work for an older version, but that technically doesn't sound supported. I mean, I'm just a word guy, and sometimes I just pay attention to what words mean.
Well, technically, it's in long-term support. So
yeah, so it gets reduced,
It gets security fixes, but not new features.
I guess this is a feature.
Technically, this is a new feature.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, a good one.
Not that I'm trying to justify things for Microsoft. The interesting thing that has been getting a little fun made of it is that MS-15011 was found by a guy from this company called JAS Global Advisors.
Yeah. Okay.
And he decided to dub this, to give this vulnerability a name.
Oh.
Kind of like, Heartbleed and Poodle and Shell Shock and so on. But he called it JASBug.
That's no good.
He just named it after his company, which I think is named after himself.
That's not a dick thing to do at all. No.
Yeah, it just means. Yeah, it's like it's got to have a catchy name that people are going to remember. And I understand you want people to remember your company, but it's not going to work.
Yeah, and you notice how it didn't really seem to catch on.
Yeah. What's interesting is the way he actually found it.
Oh yeah.
He found the bug while working on a project for ICANN, the company the group that actually controls the root domain for DNS, and specifically looking into the security issues surrounding the release of new generic top-level domains and for stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the group policy issue was discovered during research phase of that project, but is unrelated to the new stuff. Specifically, I think what it was a lot of people for their domain, because it's based on real DNS, they use a fake top-level domain.
Yeah.
Like I think the college I was helping out at on Tuesday their domain is like mc.local for Mohawk College.
Yep.
Well, I think .local is one of the new TLDs that's going to be coming out, right? Because it's for like local shopping and stuff, not for your LAN. But lots of LANs use it.
Mm-hmm.
So it means, what if I could go and buy mc.local now, and now any of their machines that are out on the internet, I could return the wrong DNS and spoof them into talking to me.
Huh.
And I think that's how he found the security vulnerability. Was actually by noticing all these requests for .local domains that don't actually exist, and so on, right? He says, so about the vulnerability, he says, it certainly doesn't work universally, and it depends on some funky configuration and happenstance, but it works frequently enough to be of concern. We will release the specifics of other attack scenarios we're aware of at some future point, but for now, it's important that folks patch and not become complacent because of the perceived on-LAN requirement, right? Because, like you said, if you're on a laptop at a hotel connecting back to work, you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you're actually in a worse position than somebody on the LAN and so on.
Right.
He said the on-LAN is not a strict requirement, so please go patch. And then going on, he says, not only are Windows clients too trusting of the responses they get back from DNS, they can also be fairly easily tricked into downgrading to unauthenticated or unencrypted transit protocols, like being tricked into using WebDAV over HTTP instead of HTTPS. And basically doing things where, like in this vulnerability, tricked into not checking the authenticity of the server they're talking to. Right? Because SSLs vote more than just encryption, right? It's also about proving the identity of the remote side so that you're sure that, you're having an encrypted conversation, but is it really with your bank, or is you having an encrypted conversation with the bad guy, in which case he could decrypt it, right?
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. So Microsoft rolled out a new feature to address the vulnerability called UNC Hardened Access, which ensures the right authentication and in-transit encryption is carried out. So then he says, instead of being subject to the OS trying too hard to make communication work, the UNC infrastructure within Windows now allows the higher level resource requester, so the application actually trying to connect to something, to specify whether mutual authentication, meaning making sure that both ends are the right ones, integrity, that the message hasn't been modified in transit, and privacy, that it's encrypted so somebody not involved, one of the two parties in the transaction, can read it. So this is the right general purpose solution to the problem. So they had to come up with a whole new framework where when the program is requesting data from a remote site, it can say, I need to make sure that the other end is really who they say they are. I need to make sure that nothing's modified as it goes across the internet. And I want to make sure that it's encrypted so other people can't read it and so on. Of course, it seems that this suggests that there are a bunch of tools that unless a tool knows to do this, it's going to default to doing it insecurely.
Right. Very true. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be years and years of sort of ways of doing this sort of set.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that Microsoft's kind of stuck here because they can't just break everybody's application.
No. They must have been, I mean, when they started figuring out how this was going to have to be fixed, they must have been just shaking their heads. Like, what are we going to do? Yeah.
Yeah. Schmidt said that there's a outstanding issue that Microsoft has not addressed where Active Directory clients could leak DNS requests to the open internet. The internet's DNS infrastructure will try to resolve these queries as it would with any other providing pointers to the right sources rather than results from the local Active Directory controller for an enterprise domain. So, somebody using that .local stuff could end up getting an answer of, oh, here's a website over here, when they're actually trying to find something that should have been on an internal IP. He said that during the research he did for ICANN, more than 200,000 Active Directory clients reached out to the server he set up via a series of customized DNS registrations. So he bought a bunch of .local top-level domains, like land.local or something, and he got over 200,000 requests or 200,000 unique clients. It doesn't quite say.
That is either way.
Yeah. So there's a lot of these requests leaking out to the internet, mostly just wasting the internet, honestly, but they're small, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But
get your noise off my line.
All of a sudden, those domains can start becoming active, right? You remember we had the same problem with SSL certificates. Remember a bunch of people had like the certificate authorities used to let you just buy a certificate for like 192.168.0.1, and then you could use that on anybody's LAN because it was a valid certificate, trusted.
Yeah.
But you could basically replace, if two people had the certificate for that same IP address, either one of them would work, and that would be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they have more stringent requirements where you have to use a real domain. You can't make up, your own top level domain. Partly because a bunch of people that did, now those domains actually exist, right? And it's causing all kinds of problems.
What a mess for Microsoft. Well, at least they've got some kind of fix.
Yep, I have a bunch of links to other coverage. Sophos has some good stuff in there, and then Threatpost and Krebs and so on.
All in the show notes, and you can go read up on your own. If you're curious about this or you have a Windows network you need to manage, might be worth reading a little bit about. Hey, Alan. Would this be a good spot to stop and tell you about my cell phone?
Sure.
All right. Well, I have a great cell phone and a great cell phone provider. I got the Nexus 5 on Ting, and Ting is mobile that makes sense, my mobile service provider. And here's what I love about Ting. No contract, and me and you only have to pay for what you or me would use. I think this is a really nice model, and I think all of the cell phone companies will eventually have to go to it. Oh, what do you got there, Alan? What do you got
I have
there?
my Nexus 6.
Oh, yeah.
It's one better than yours.
That is. You're right. It is, and it's kind of making me jelly. I want one. That's a big screen, though. And you put it in that huge case, which makes it even
the case is not huge, right? It's just a little rubber thing.
Oh, okay. It's just a really big phone.
Actually, off Amazon, I just ordered a different case that has a belt hook because
you're an IT guy.
I like having it on the belt.
Yeah.
It does fit in my pocket. Like most people are like, "How do you fit that in your pocket?" I don't know. My pockets are big.
Yeah. Maybe.
My pants are used to holding very large objects.
Wow. There we go. Okay, there we go. See, there you have it. So you go over there to techsnap.ting.com. The Nexus 6 is one of the devices you can grab. In fact, if you want, you can also just grab a SIM card and then just bring whatever you want. Ting has a whole BYOD section you can check out to see what cards are compatible. You can also grab a GSM card now, so you can do CDMA or GSM. In fact, they just did a great Google Hangout on that if you want to grab it. And you can now officially bring an iPhone 6 or iPhone 6 Plus to Ting if it's unlocked. And speaking of unlocked, a brand new set of cell phone unlocking rules in the United States are going into effect. They started yesterday. So
Awesome.
Mandated, I believe, by the FCC, but I don't know the details of it.
I think it's the DMCA has provisions that lets the Librarian of Congress decide when things should be allowed.
Yeah. And so it was called the Consumer Code for Wireless Service, and Ting has a whole great post up, including there is a catch, but they'll tell you all about it up on their blog. Go to techsnap.ting.com to get started. Techsnap.ting.com gets you a $25 credit if you have a device that'll work, like, say, an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 5 or pretty much any of the great Android devices. And if you don't have a phone, well, then take $25 off your phone. Also works great for hotspots. TechSNAP.ting.com. No hold customer service. Only pay for what you use. I think it's a pretty neat system, and they have a really, really, really great online dashboard to manage your account. You can go check it all out. Everything from feature phones to the highest-end phones over at Ting. TechSNAP.ting.com. Go over there, check them out, and then visit that blog. See what I'm talking about with these new unlocking rules, just so you're up to date. That's all carriers, not a Ting-specific thing. It's just great information that Ting puts out there. Might as well update yourself on that. And then, do me a favor. Before you leave the Ting website, just swing back to that front page and try out that savings calculator. That is really the thing that kind of puts it all in perspective for you. You put in what you actually use into there, and you can see how much you might save over 2 years. I'm saving over $2,000. It's a really big deal. TechSNAP.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Okay, Alan, moving right along, I believe we have a little Internet Explorer story to cover, don't we? Using perhaps some 0 days? What?
Yeah. So the headline for this story, I just modified our copy of it because it's misleading a little bit. But they say Chinese hackers compromised Forbes.com using IE 0-day or IE and Flash 0-day exploits. The interesting, first of all, they didn't actually compromise Forbes.com using the 0 days. What they did is compromise Forbes.com and then use the 0 days to infect the visitors, which was the point, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
yeah, so a Chinese advanced persistent threat group was able to chain together 2 0-day vulnerabilities, one against Adobe's Flash Player and one against Internet Explorer 9 and above, and then compromise Forbes.com and install the exploit.
And Forbes has got to get a ton of traffic.
Yes. It's like the 68th most popular website in the U.S. or something like that.
Makes sense.
and in particular, is very popular against the type of people that this Chinese group wanted to attack, which is people that work in governments and at defense contractors. So the group's aim was to gain access to companies at several U.S. defense and finance firms by setting up a watering hole attack on a site that would then drop a malicious DLL onto their system. So it's actually not clear how Forbes' site was actually compromised, how they got into the Forbes site to change some of the stuff around to insert the virus.
Yeah.
But on Forbes' website, there was a flash-powered widget on the site called Thought of the Day, which is like somebody's head in a little thought bubble.
Oh, jeez.
It's like a quote or something. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why that needed.
That doesn't even
flash,
sound needed, dude.
Yeah. But what the attackers managed to do is change the URL that loaded that widget to point to their website and load their Flash widget, which exploited the Adobe 0-day and infected the machine.
Alan, do you think we got to get to the... I mean, maybe this is overreaction on my part, and I am a bit more of a Flash hater than you are, but I don't hate it, but do you think we got to get to the point where businesses need to say, what is the advantage, what is the trade-off for using Flash? Like every time we decide to use Flash, it has to be for a really good business reason. And things like tip of the day doesn't seem like it's worth the risk.
Tip of the day, maybe not. But in particular, if people just stopped using Flash, then the bad guys will just find the next easiest thing.
True.
So it's not like
it doesn't.
Dropping Flash wouldn't solve any of these problems necessarily.
Because the bad guys don't go away necessarily. So.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Then the flaw would also use an Internet Explorer 9.0 day to do address space layout randomization bypass to be able to still infect the machine even if it had the more advanced attack mitigation features turned on. So even if you had the fancier stuff from Microsoft turned on, it used a 0-day in IE9 to bypass that.
Jeez. How can that be bypassed? That doesn't seem like...
Yeah, the whole point of ASLR is to stop attacks.
Yeah.
But all we ever hear about are ASLR bypasses.
And why does the browser have the ability to bypass address space randomization?
It was a
Oh,
bug.
right. Yeah.
But and then as you can see from the diagram, after they got infected on one person's machine at random defense contractor, then spread over the network and tried to take over all the machines at the defense contractor and start exfiltrating as much data as they could. So the Adobe bug, which was a buffer overflow in Flash, was patched back on December 9th.
Okay.
But the ASLR mitigation bypass wasn't patched until yesterday's Patch Tuesday, or I guess 2 days ago, Patch Tuesday, and that's why the story is just coming out now.
Because now the fix is out.
Yeah, because the Forbes site was compromised a couple of months ago, but they didn't want to spill the beans until Microsoft had fixed the hole. Adobe fixed the hole a while ago.
Yeah.
The release of the details was timed to coincide with Microsoft's patch. I just said that. Sorry. And then both Invincia and iSight Partners have breakdowns of how the attack actually worked. But I'd still like to know how the attackers got into Forbes.com to modify the content there. But that could have just been a phishing attack,
or some low-hanging fruit kind of, who knows, right? That is an interesting one though, and to grab Forbes is a pretty good get.
Yeah, and that's kind of the holy grail thing we talked about, right? Back even like second episode of TechSNAP. It's like if you can compromise some big news site like Forbes.com or CNN or whatever, and stick a virus on there, you can affect everybody.
Yep.
Now, to avoid being seen, these guys only targeted people from certain companies. So they don't try to run the exploit on every machine they saw because they wanted it to go undetected for longer.
Mm-hmm. You know what else? The other thing that strikes me about this story is this is a pretty legitimate hack. I mean, quote unquote, you get a certain group of users from a pretty important place. You go after even more specific set of users that you found there. But yet, well, the only place I've heard about this really is here on the show. Like, it's interesting, like how the bullshit gets all of the attention, and then stuff like this, that's almost kind of semi-legit, pretty much gets no attention at all, except for like from outlets like us.
This is the real cyber attack.
Yeah. Isn't it just interesting the way that coverage
works? It wasn't designed to disrupt anybody. It was designed to be undetected.
Yeah. The real kind you want, where you want information and you want to try to get in there for a while.
Steal all the Word docs from the company and then hope they never find out you were there. Even.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the the whole cyber terrorism, bad guys, hacking. Spy.
Yeah. I guess it just kind of gets ignored, maybe because it just doesn't fit into an overall narrative. But Yeah. All right, Alan. Any other
But
thoughts
it's
on that?
a very good use, I guess, case study in a watering hole attack.
Yes. Yeah. And it's much cooler than the one I had personal experience years ago. I've told the story before on the show, but years ago, our local NBC News affiliate had their site compromised. And a lot of my clients, because they're a Seattle news outlet, visit their website. And so in one day, I got several calls from several clients that all got infected. And of course, one of them was a terminal server. And it was, you go to the web page in Internet Explorer and you get infected. And that's all you had to do. You didn't have to click on anything. And so I just went around.
Nice
of course,
drive-by download, eh?
yeah, and of course, once I figured out how to fix it once, I was able to apply that fix to all the computers. So it wasn't a huge deal,
Right.
but it was a little mini version of this, and it just struck a whole bunch of people at once. So
I think the other big one was I remember we talked about somebody compromised the forum that all the iPhone developers use,
yeah,
right? And then it got into Facebook
Yeah.
and Apple
Yeah.
and a bunch and like every big company that makes apps for iPhone and so on.
right. It
because
wasn't like an Apple one; it was like a community one, right?
it was just a community
and they got
forum,
Facebook
website.
devs, and they got
And they got devs that so like every major company that makes iPhone apps has
Yeah.
their dev visit this page.
yeah.
And they just injected a bit of an iframe into the top of the forum software, and it was like VBulletin, right? It's a common forum software that that kind of thing happens all the time. But because they specifically targeted this one site, they got all these people inside Apple and Facebook and otherwise.
Yeah.
And they probably only got caught because of Facebook's network security detected these outbound connections to this weird place and was like, "What's going on here?" and looked into it.
Fascinating story, Alan. Thank you for finding that one and bringing
Yes.
it to our attention. Any other thoughts?
No, that's about it for that one.
All right, well, then I got a thought, and that's IX Systems. Head over to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP right now. Go check out IX Systems rigs powered by those Intel Xeon processors, which are totally bad arse. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. And we've talked a lot about TechSNAP, on TechSNAP, we've talked a lot about IX Systems. And one thing that we kind of touch around, but we can't ever really give it to you in a way they could, is some of their production practices. And so they've done on their What's New section on their site. They've done a post on why our production practices make us great. And they say, they go through. I love the pictures of inside the.
Yeah, you don't actually think of an actual assembly line, but that's what they have.
Yeah.
But you can see those machines where they're sitting on the they're actually plugged into power and monitor and network because they're actually running a live CD on them and burning in the machine and making sure all the components work and testing it is like 2 or 3 days before they ship it to you to make sure that when you get it, everything's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And IX Systems just takes this sort of careful approach to everything they do with their customer relationships, with their hardware partners, and with the communities that the hardware that they build runs, like the FreeBSD communities and open source communities. And you really, really, really get a sense of that when you actually attend an event. IX Systems will have some folks down at Scale, I think, next week. They go to all these events to go out there and meet the people that are actually deploying this stuff in production. And you can have an open conversation with them about your challenges. And it's very rewarding because it's not a one-way relationship where you kind of feel like they're selling you. It very much feels like a collaboration in designing the right components for your infrastructure. And it really feels like kind of having like that backup expert line you can call and be like, I'm thinking about doing this. I've never really ventured into this territory and I have some questions about this. And the peace of mind you have, because the people that are answering those questions are oftentimes literally the people that either invented the software or maintain it today. Like that's an amazing advantage IX Systems has. Nobody has that. Literally, nobody has that.
But I was literally just talking to somebody, Canadian government office needed a reference from IX for Canada. So I've been talking to them. And they said the same thing I've heard from a bunch of people when they get a quote from IX. They're like, it looks like it's missing a zero. Shouldn't this cost more? and that's the big difference is because IX is leveraging this open source software and because their goal is to build a business and make their customers happy, not just they don't have the bloat, they don't have big company syndrome, right? They don't have this whole departments of people that exist just because that's what a big company has and stuff. But yeah, it even surprised me when I started using them that it was actually less expensive than just buying the parts and putting it together myself. And I was getting all their expertise, their QA process, their warranty on top of the manufacturer stuff, and I was very, very surprised.
Indeed. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Go see why Alan and I have been surprised, and we keep getting more and more surprised all the time.
Yes.
Some good stuff. And also,
they have an upcoming webinar series.
Oh, really?
A fireside chat with 2 ZFS gurus.
Oh, that's right. You told me about this. Now, do you know when, though?
Should be March 17th. I think we'll be doing more than one of them, but that's the first one. It was supposed to be sooner, but the other ZFS expert, Josh Petzel, who we've interviewed on BSD now twice, he has great war stories about ZFS. And just in general, sysadmin war stories. He's a superstar. He has to actually travel up to Canada to fix something for a customer.
Oh.
And so he couldn't do it the first week of March, and the second week of March, I'm in Tokyo. And
you guys are busy. So once you guys manage to sync up.
Yes, once we sync up, we'll be doing that, and
we'll
it'll be recorded, and it'll be
we'll
awesome.
give people. We'll probably have time to give people a heads up on the show. Yep. So that'd be cool. Well, I'll check that out. Also, ixsystems.com/TechSNAP has the white paper you can download if you've been hearing what we've been saying, but you want to grease the wheels a little bit, maybe with the people above you, or especially if they're having some troubles kind of totally locking in on the differences, check out that white paper. I think that'll help out. Okay, Alan. So this next story, I just, I get it, and I see the usefulness of it, but I'm not sure why it's Facebook, and it kind of is weird. Maybe after you tell me a little bit about it, I'll understand it a little more. But it's called Threat Exchange, and it's like a platform to exchange cyber threats.
Intelligence.
Okay.
Threat intelligence.
Threat intelligence.
Specifically, it's for companies to share information they have about threats that are being used against them, but also against their users. So, for example, when Facebook sees that people's accounts are getting hacked and keep linking to this website, they can share that with other people. Like some of the other people on the platform already are Pinterest, Yahoo, Tumblr, Twitter, Bitly, and Dropbox. So they can be like, hey, Bitly, don't let anybody create Bitly links to this URL or stop them or whatever because it's known to be bad, right? Or they can, they're going to have malware samples. So when they actually see malware getting linked to, they'll download it and throw it in this threat intelligence thing with the MD5 and SHA-256 hash of it or whatever. And then that can automatically be pushed out to the virus scanners companies. And you can go into blacklists, and it'll allow everybody to kind of compile together the information they've got about what is being used against them and against their users in one place with an actual API, so you can do it programmatically. Because right now, a couple of companies share intelligence manually.
Yeah.
But it's like with Word documents or spreadsheets or just files, and
that's no good.
It's just not organized. It's kind of an ad hoc way. Whereas this will provide an actual API, so everybody can do this programmatically, and the information will move around more quickly, and make sure that we can, when a new threat shows up, right when we see the URL for this Flash exploit, we can start blocking it everywhere more quickly, and make sure that people can't tweet links to it and share them on Facebook to spread it. So I think one of the main points of this will just be stopping malware from going viral.
That actually does make a lot of sense. And I didn't really consider the fact that they are sort of the perfect sensor network.
They're on the front line.
Yeah.
Basically, they built this system internally, and then they're like, well, we might as well let everybody else put data into it as well.
The reason why it struck me as interesting is because it's not really related, but we have the whole CISPA thing going on right now, which is all about information sharing. And
they mentioned that. So,
really?
Facebook hopes that the initial partner list they have will grow to include other technology companies, by which I think they mean Microsoft, Google, Apple, so on, with a large internet footprint. Microsoft, for example, has developed its own information sharing platform it calls Interflow. And the FBI announced last winter that they released their unclassified version of its malware repositories in hopes of spurring public-private information sharing of threat data. And then, yes, like you saw, CISPA is trying to mandate this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think something like what Facebook is doing will probably do better. Partly just because it'll be managed by the people that actually deal with this, not by some...
It'll be more
consulting company that got hired by the government to build an API for this or something.
Yeah, and it will be more driven by the technical requirements.
Yes. What's interesting is Facebook actually kind of did a better job on this than they do on Facebook itself. Specifically, they say it's open for free to everyone, but most of the heavy lifting is done by Facebook's infrastructure. So nobody's having to pay for the storage of all these malware samples and so on.
Right.
The platform developers were also cognizant of some of the concerns enterprises have about sharing threat data from both a competitive, you don't want to give your competitors information about what threats are being used against you or whatever, but also risk management. Privacy controls are built into Threat Exchange that not only sanitize information about the members, so when someone posts a sample of malware that's been used against them, it doesn't say who it came from. It just says, here's malware that's being used against someone, make sure you block it. It also allows collaborators to share data with everybody in the exchange or only a particular subset at first. So even though it's designed to be used by everybody, a couple of companies can use it to just share data between themselves while they're actively being attacked and then share it with everybody later. Right? So it'll even be used for private sharing of threat intelligence between just a couple of people that are all being attacked by the same guy or something, right?
That's pretty slick.
Like we saw, for example, with the watering hole attack we saw earlier with the Flash 0 day. It downloads this DLL and runs it on your system. And it was targeting, like 3 certain defense contractors and a finance company. Well, those 4 companies could use this platform to share the signatures of that DLL and other stuff they saw and URLs they saw to make sure they each block it, but not expose that to everybody until Microsoft had the patch out and then they'd share the data or whatever. Or they could also share the data without being concerned that it'll point back to them.
And now,
in addition, they also pull in open source intelligence data and put it in as well.
Now, how do they make money on this thing? Are they going to?
This isn't. This is helping Facebook block malware quicker.
They figure that's just good enough for them. It's the value's there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they built this just to use internally and so on, and then they open it up because why not have everybody else throw in URLs they should blacklist as well?
Yeah. And you think about it, it almost reminds me a little bit of how some of the early day, it's not the same at all because it's way cooler, but some of the early day spam blacklists were just different large mail service providers started getting together and collaborating on who do we know are spammers. And it has challenges. I mean, I have had to fight that
kind
sometimes.
Of an API version of the what do you call it? Full disclosure mailing list.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we've seen this malware sample.
It's like a more real time version too.
Yeah. It's kind of combines virus total with URL blacklists and spam blacklists and IP lists and just says we keep seeing this pattern from the attackers. So watch out. If you see this pattern too, then you should look in this direction.
Well, and they'll be able to say with some, at least, for the people that participate, like this particular piece of malware is really spreading fast. Like this is one that's going nuts.
Well, in particular, now we can block the sharing of it via Facebook.
Yeah. But what would be
it.
fascinating from like the standpoint of our show is if Facebook could release some data, like that piece of malware spread at this rate, or was, it clicked on by these many people. And we don't have to get specific on names and who, but like some sort of data so we get an idea of how malware does move around, and maybe that'll give us an idea of how to prevent it too.
Well, I've signed up to get access to the data feed.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yep.
Oh, good one.
So they also go on to say, if some reasonable large internet properties cooperate on attacks they've seen and respond to, the vast majority of the internet will be safer. We want to bring in more companies like that and eventually broaden it beyond big companies to just any small web properties and individual researchers, because that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Like that caffeine guy that found that watches the exploit kits and found those Flash show days a couple of weeks ago. Having him on that platform and pushing those hashes into that platform in such a way that it's not necessarily identifying him could be very valuable to everybody.
Right.
And so I think definitely getting opened up to individual researchers and smaller web properties as well, so it's not only just the big companies using it, would be very good.
I wonder, will companies like Microsoft drop their, what was theirs, like Threat Stream or whatever they call it? Will they
Flow or something that?
Yeah, Threat Flow. I don't know, Ant Flow. If they will drop their,
Interflow.
Okay, Interflow. Will they drop their system? Will they connect the systems? Will they compete?
Because the Facebook one has an API. Hopefully, there would at least be an interconnect, and Facebook will be able to pull in intelligence from the Microsoft one or something.
Yeah,
or vice versa. But I definitely think an industry-led one that in particular puts emphasis on individual researchers and research companies, might do better than a government-powered one. They say, we want to create a forum where we can share attack and threat intelligence in an easy way and share it with as many people who want to receive it. The classic example of an attack you're investigating where only you and a few companies are targeted, those companies can then collaborate together on that particular attack and share data. Perhaps they don't feel it's appropriate to go wider because it may tip their hand and alert the attacker, or they would not be beneficial in the investigation if others started poking at their infrastructure in the meantime and possibly disrupt the work they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So that's why they have those extra privacy features in there. And it'll be interesting to see what that results in, and how I'm hoping to see lots of companies jump on that.
Yeah, I think you've changed. I mean, I wasn't like against it, but I didn't quite get it. Now I think you've really helped me kind of click it together and why it actually is a good thing, even though it is a Facebook thing, and because I'm a little skeptical when it's Facebook, but it actually makes a lot of sense that it would be them. They're kind of in the perfect position to do this.
Yeah, and with them teaming up with Bitly and Twitter in particular, and Dropbox, so they, people are hosting the malware on Dropbox, we can get it knocked off.
Teaming up with Twitter is encouraging because they're kind of competitors, which makes me think that they can make this work.
And they have Tumblr and Pinterest as well.
Okay, wow.
So
there's a lot of data
that growing. Then that will definitely be a lot easier to shut down malware being spread via click this link on Twitter and Facebook and so on.
No kidding.
And I think that will make a big difference.
Any other thoughts on the story?
No.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna be really interested to see if you get anything from that data feed. That'd be really interesting to see that. You let us know. All right, well, I'll tell you about something quite interesting, and that is DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com right now. Why? Because DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server you get root access to. I'm looking at the technology page on the DigitalOcean website. You can go over there right now, DigitalOcean.com, and click on the features link. They have an SSD-only cloud. All of the servers from the beginning were SSD. They have a very flexible API. You can take advantage to load the rigs on there and all of this stuff. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it in a second, but I just want to give you from a snapshot why we here on the TechSNAP show think this is a great setup. SSD hard drives, all in. Tier 1 bandwidth, they're all in. You can provision a server in under a minute. And that's if you just do it manually. If you take advantage of the API, it's nuts. But here's the best part. It's so freaking valuable. So not only do you get started up and going really fast, but it only costs $5 a month for the first baseline server. And for $5 a month, you get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer.
And for $10, you get a gig of RAM and 2 terabytes of transfer.
Yeah. It's a really good deal. It's a really, really good deal. And it's really good stuff. You can run FreeBSD. You can run all the different Linuxes you might want to run up there. You got one-click push deployments of a lot of really popular software stacks. Incredible tutorials written up. Lots of new ones going in for FreeBSD right now.
Yes.
All managed.
And they have this system for requesting new features.
Oh, really? That's cool.
It's actually that's how FreeBSD got on there. It went on the list, and it got the most votes of any feature ever.
Yeah. You can check out the community section on their site, too.
Yeah. I think you get 10 votes in total that you can spend on the different features you'd like them to implement, and you get the votes back when they actually implement or cancel one of the features.
That's neat.
And it allows the community to decide where they should go next.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's all managed with this awesome control panel.
It's a company that actually listens to the users.
So, like, if you're going to go up there and you're going to deploy a FreeBSD rig, like, you've done it. Like, isn't that the control? It makes it so simple. You can look out all of the different. So you mentioned, like, there's a higher-end rig, and there's several other higher-end rigs, right? They're all right here in the DigitalOcean control panel. You click the one you want, and it provisions the server for you. You're ready to go. Like, it's that fast. But here's the best part. You can try it out 2 months for free when you use our promo code SNAPOcean. SNAPOcean, lowercase, all one word. It'll give you a $10 credit. You can try out one of the bigger boy rigs or try out that $5 rig 2 months for free. I've got 3 $5 rigs. And the reason why I've done this is for a couple. One is it's an Arch-based box, and I want to kind of keep it low on how much stuff it has going on. And I've got an Ubuntu one that we're running, and a different Ubuntu one that we're running for different things. And it's a mixture of things like BitTorrent Sync, OwnCloud, Ruby on Rails. We've got from time to time we need to run like a secondary XMPP server up there, or a Nicecast box or whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is you can $5 is cheap, but you can also rent them hourly for 0.15 cents an hour.
And also, it's pretty popular in our community. People just go get a DigitalOcean droplet and use that as their Minecraft server or their Mumble server because it's often cheaper than going and getting like an official Minecraft, like package that you would buy that's Minecraft hosting.
Yeah, those ones are definitely more expensive than $5.
You just deploy a DigitalOcean droplet, you get root access to the box, it's yours, and you can manage it easy, and they've got tutorials to get you going. Lots of great resources, and with that promo code, SNAPOcean, you can try it out 2 months for free when you visit DigitalOcean.com. And a big thanks to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Hey, so we are at the halfway mark-ish in the show, which means it's time for everybody to go download their HD versions of BSD Now. Time for a change. Episode 76 came out, just a little bit ago.
Yes, we interview Henning Bauer about OpenNTPD. Especially, it turned out we did the interview because it was they finally got the portable version going again, and it was a bunch of interesting news. And it so happens that we interviewed him from a hackathon they were having in Australia. And at that hackathon, they actually invented a new feature where your NTP daemon can go out to a website over HTTPS and find out what time it is. Now, it doesn't use that to actually sync your time because it's not accurate to, microseconds like you want, but it uses it to make sure the time server is giving you is legitimate. So this way, a rogue time server can't cause you to get the wrong time because if it's more than a couple of minutes off what an HTTP server says it is, which you verified it's a server you trust with an SSL certificate, then it throws out the result and tries a different NTP server.
That's slick.
Yeah, I was like, he talked in the interview about how all the standards for the authentication stuff of making sure the NTP server is legit were all horrible. They require like that more lines of code than all of the NTP daemon is or client is already, and a bunch of things like that. And then they just kind of thought up this really simple, elegant solution. It's like, that's a great idea. Why didn't anybody think of that a long time ago?
Episode 76. Time for a change. JupiterBroadcasting.com. You can also find all of the show notes for this program over there. So you can, if you're over there getting links that we talked about anyways, open up another tab and get BSD Now going.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Alan. In fact, hold on, one more thing. Isn't there a new segment introduced in this episode too?
Yes, we did a new discussion segment where it's less showing off a website and just telling you what's happening, and just Chris and I talking and giving thoughts about something. And we compared VPN solutions. We talked about OpenVPN, IPsec with OpenBSD or FreeBSD. What else do we do? OpenSSH, Tor, and a bunch of different things.
Cool. That sounds like a good segment.
Advantages and disadvantages to each, and the various encryption modes like encrypt then Mac, encrypt and Mac, or Mac and encrypt, etc.
Cool. All right, I'm definitely watching that. Thanks, Alan. All right. Well, Alan, with the news all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP at JupiterBroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit like nobody did this week over at TechSNAP.reddit.com. And Alan, our first email comes in from Trey. We got 2 questions from Trey. I'll do them back to back. Or 2 emails, I guess I should say. Here we go. He says, "Hi, Alan." Well, hey, Trey. This is Chris. Mm-hmm. Hi, Trey. He says, "I had a question on redundancy in a ZFS pool. I've heard you recommend several times that people use groups of mirrored pairs in their pools, but I was wondering why RAID Z would or wouldn't be the best solution for anything over 2 drives. For example, I was wanting to build a NAS with 6 drives. I could use 3 pairs of drives in my pool, or I could use RAID Z2 or Z3. My problem comes with drive failure. We can simplify things by not worrying about additional failure during resilvering." Okay, he'll accept that. "Say I have 2 random drive failures, though. Out of my 6 drives, there are 15 possible combinations of 2 drives, and there are 3 of those that would result in all data lost." Boy, he's really worried about this. "I understand there's a bit of overhead with calculating parity on RAID Z setups, and that mirrored drives have a really good read performance. But even something as small as 6 drives should be able to saturate a gigabit port or 2, right? For a small office or home setup, is there really any reason we should use anything other than RAID Z?"
Yes and no. The biggest advantage, obviously, to mirrors is performance. If you put all 6 drives into a RAID Z2 or 3, you get the IOPS, the random read performance, of 1 drive, because all 6 of those have to work in tandem, right? Whereas if you do mirrors, you get the read IOPS of the total number of drives you have, and the write IOPS of the total number of sets you have.
Okay.
Right. So if you did 3 sets of 2 drives, you would have the read IOPS of 6 drives and the write IOPS of 3 drives. Whereas with ZFS, with all 6 drives in a Z2 or Z3, you get the performance of 1 drive.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably enough, right? If you have 1 gigabit link, then your regular spinning hard drives can do 120 plus megabytes a second. So that will be more than enough to saturate your gigabit LAN, and you'll be happy. Now, if you're backing up, if you're running VMs off of it, where you're going to have a lot of small reads and writes all over the place, then you're going to be more worried about the performance.
Okay.
The other big advantage to mirrors is if you do all 6 drives as a RAID Z 2 or 3 or something, if you want to make the pool bigger later, you have to add in that same set. You'd have to add another 6 drives. Whereas if you did it as mirrors with 6 2-drive mirrors, you could add just 2 more drives and the pool gets bigger. And you can keep doing that. And also, when you want to replace drives with bigger ones, you could replace just 2 of those 6 drives with bigger ones, and all of a sudden you get that more space. Whereas with RAID Z, you don't get the more space until you replace all 6 with bigger drives. So mirrors give you more flexibility. But yes, they do have that greater chance of failure. And so that's where your RAID Z2 or Z3 would protect you better. And you get the better space efficiency. You get more usable space.
I like that.
With Z3, it would be the same as 3 mirrors. But with Z2, you would actually get more space than you could out of your mirror configuration. So most people probably want RAID Z2 is probably good enough. Z3 is with only 6 drives. You're only getting half the storage space. So then mirrors definitely look better because of the performance. But yeah, for most home setups, RAID Z2 is probably the best. But mirrors do give you that much more better flexibility. Like if Chris was doing a setup for his setup, I would just recommend mirrors. Even though it would cost more in the long run because you need more hard drives to store the same amount of stuff, it gives him that flexibility to change just 2 drives at a time. When he has to upgrade.
And so far, I've never had an AS where I haven't needed to do that.
Yeah,
that has always been like drive failures. They do happen. Yes. Needing to swap out and have that flexibility always happens every time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so mirrors definitely have that extra flexibility, and you might be very glad you chose mirrors later on. You can do mirrors that are deeper. Like with your 6 drives, you could do 2 mirror pairs of 3 drives each, and then you can lose up to 2 drives out of each mirror set, but then you're only getting 2 drives worth of storage, and that's probably outside your budget.
Yeah. Okay, he sent a second email, and I think it's the same tray. Could be a different tray. And he wants to ask us about refurbished servers. He says, "Hi, Chris and Ellen. Great show, all that fun stuff. It might be a different tray, actually. I wanted to get your guys' opinions on using refurbished server hardware. I've been looking at some used rack mount servers about 4 to 8 years old. Definitely not going to be used for any production stuff, but maybe as a headless test server to throw in the closet, maybe play around with some virtualization on it. Thoughts?"
There's a couple of gotchas you have to watch out for, but I bought one of these machines. It was an E5504, so it was 2 generations before they started going with the i7 and E3 type processors.
Oh, okay.
So now I guess that's 4, 5, 6 generations old, something like that. The problem it had is the disk controller built into it that was does the hot swapping, like the SAS expander.
Yeah.
Doesn't support drives over 2 terabytes.
Oh yeah.
So it
that could be a drawback
when I started to stick 3 terabyte drives in it, and I ended up actually going to IX and buying a new server and using that and filling the one I bought off eBay from one of these used rack mount places with 1 terabyte drives. So I'm using it now with 1 terabyte drives, but it did kind of kick me that my 3 terabyte drives wouldn't work in it.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
The other thing is specifically mentioning virtualization. The difference between 4 years and 8 years old will make a difference there. You want to check which processor it has and make sure that processor supports the virtualization offload features you're going to want. Right? If it doesn't have the hardware virtualization, then it's not going to work for that very well.
Unless you're okay with slow virtualization.
Right. Well, if you want to use something like Beehive, it's required.
Right, and I think it is for like KVM and
is required as well.
Yeah, I was thinking when I said that though, I was thinking like VirtualBox. I would work.
Yeah.
But what are you learning then?
Exactly. So you especially when you're looking at the used stuff, getting stuff that's like the E5500 or E5600 that has those features is only slightly more than the older processors that don't have it. So I know you're buying used to save money. But if the difference is $100 between having the features you want and not, then your best bet there is ark.intel.com has the stat sheets on like every processor they ever made. and just double check that it's going to do what you want it to do.
There you go.
And be aware that older stuff will have limits where it doesn't like big drives.
I actually ended up kind of lucking out. A couple years ago, I did buy a used server. One of the only times I've ever really done it for myself. And I made it a pfSense box.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not had a single problem. It's worked really, really well. And I felt like if that died, I could replace it with another box. So it wasn't a huge deal. Well, it'd be very inconvenient, but...
up until I started getting faster internet,
when
I went over 100 megabits for my internet, my pfSense box was a Pentium 3 that I had laying around for years. It's like a spare machine we accumulated when we had an office before Scale Engine was called Scale Engine. Back when it was just a consulting company that Stefan and I had, we just collected all these old machines that people wanted to give away or whatever.
They're done with them or whatever.
We had a rack full of random test hardware for playing with stuff on. And, nowadays it's like, I don't want anything that's not 64-bit. Just get rid of it. But, yeah. Yes, power consumption was a problem with the older machines. That's definitely something to watch out for. If you're paying for power because... if you're buying the server to go in a data center or something, if you're paying per amp, you might actually be better off with something newer in the long run. Like over the course of a year, the more power it uses might have paid for the difference between buying this used server and buying a newer one.
It's a good topic, and I'd actually like to hear more about the audience experience maybe in the subreddit.
Yeah, I definitely get sucked into looking at on eBay, and it's like, I can get that server for that cheap. And I remember specifically, I bought this AvoCent KVM for IP KVM for controlling servers that don't have IP mice. So my old hardware
They're super expensive new. eBay's a great place.
When I looked at buying this exact one, the 2-user 16 computer one, back in 2008 when we built the servers that I needed to manage. It was $16,000.
Yeah, AvoCent is super expensive.
Yep. Yeah. I paid $230 on eBay.
I know, right? You just can't pass that up.
The cables new are still $100 a piece, but I got a bulk set. When you have to watch and then pick them off as when they come up cheap.
And it still works fine?
Yep.
Yeah.
People have a problem with it resetting under heavy load and stuff, but I'm not using it that much.
That's like your
don't
KVM
expose it to
rebooting
the
on you.
internet.
Yeah.
Don't expose it to the internet, and it acts a lot better.
Yeah.
Most of the problems it has is brute force attacks against it, screw it up.
Yeah.
So keep it behind a VPN, and it generally works pretty good.
Okay, that's cool. All right. So Jeremy wrote in a super, 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 super long one. So maybe we'll parse it together. We'll kind of. I know what he's getting at, so we're fine. But I'll go through parts of it here. He says. He says, I thought it'd be interesting to discuss methods for backing up a NAS unit. As more TechSNAPers turn towards running FreeNAS on existing or custom-built systems, or buy units like the FreeNAS Mini, or maybe even a TrueNAS box, it's going to create a backup issue for those devices. Let's examine a common situation. A FreeNAS Mini is purchased with 4 drives. The unit is set up with RAID Z2 to protect against some hard drive failures. The configuration also includes keeping multiple copies of files, so great, we're totally protected, right? No. Missing one important piece of backup is the unit itself. What happens if there's fire, theft, earthquake? Something really bad happens.
Yes, so ZFS and RAID are not a substitute for backups.
Right.
You still need backups.
And I think that's kind of his core point. He's like, so what do we do? How do we back up all this stuff? He says, it seems the best solution is to set up maybe another identical to FreeNAS Mini type units and mirror all the data between the two. I realize, though, the second unit would have to be located at another location, and it's not going to be necessarily possible for all setups or mini home or small business users. It seems to me, if a user or a company can't afford 2 units, then using a light-duty unit with extended 3 or NTFS to store the main files and have it backed up to a ZFS machine might be more ideal. This way, in case extended 3 or NTFS files get corrupted, you have the snapshots being taken by the ZFS system to roll back. He says, in addition to this idea is the dreaded online storage backup, so performing the data dump to some service. This solves many problems, but now you're turning your data over to an external source. Could be risky, plus slow upload speeds are bad.
The slow upload speed is basically the thing that prevents you from necessarily having the second FreeNAS somewhere else and syncing across it or whatever. For online backup, if you use something like TarSNAP, it's encrypted before it leaves, and you don't ever have to worry about the service leaking your data somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes a big difference. And they have a deduplication system where you're only uploading the difference in blocks. So it's very good about not wasting any upload bandwidth. The thing you can do if you're doing the remote replication thing, if you and your friend both have a FreeNAS and you purposely buy it twice as big as you each want and then back each other's stuff up.
Wait, before you go off TarSnap real quick, can I ask a TarSnap question?
Sure.
Does he offer like a way to send a drive to start? So if your upload speed is super...
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. That would be really cool.
Yeah. That would be. But he doesn't have a fast internet connection at his house to do
Right.
that.
Well, and then he's got to be able to receive these drives and then upload the data himself
So
as
Amazon
them.
has a service, but then it wouldn't be encrypted first.
Well, that's just it. How do you do their encryption if you're... Yeah, I mean, it's... Yeah.
So specifically for that point, if you're backing up with a friend or something, to do the initial backup, you could be like, well, bring the drive over your FreeNAS over to my house, and we'll sync the two of them,
and
then we'll only send the differences back and forth.
There's that Crash Plan, which you can pay for, and it has an online component, or you can. I think there's Crash Plan free, and it lets you just back up between two locations,
right? Or BitTorrent sync or whatever, or if they're both FreeNASes, you can use the ZFS replication feature.
Yeah.
The nice thing with that is you can do it to specific data sets. You can decide these sets of directories should be backed up, and these ones don't matter. So, right, the videos you download off the internet or whatever, you don't need to back up your copies of TechSNAP. You can download them again.
Right.
You do want to back up the videos you took of your little baby or whatever.
Totally. Yep. And so that is probably a good point. Maybe right there is just the way you divvy up your data. You back up some of it. That's another way. Yeah. You have to back up everything.
Yep. Yeah. And about I mentioned external hard drives.
Yeah.
Yes, that works. ZFS replication can do diffs that way. So if you just have a set of drives, like if you do them, so you have a rotating set. So if you have like 3 drives, you back up this one this week and send it away, and then you get the one that's the oldest and bring it back and then do it. And so that there's always 2 of the drives away and the one that you're working on local.
Yep.
And you can do just incrementals with that, so it doesn't take a very long time. Actually, PCBSD is coming up with a feature for that where you can keep your home directory on USB sticks encrypted, and it gets decrypted when you log in. And so that you can move your home directory around with you. Because Chris wanted this for his house where he's got, his home directory shared between like 3 or 4 computers.
Yeah, it's
but
pain in the
also,
butt.
he has a lot of kids and only so many computers, and this would let each of them have their own set of stuff, no matter which. They could sit at any computer and it would
And
work.
I've with USB 3 thumb drives, I've run like the entire OS off the thumb drive, and it's plenty fast.
I've done that, although I burned out 4 USB sticks with that.
Yeah,
though.
yeah, I did too. I
They're
not 4, but I burned out a USB stick as well.
Yeah, the USB 3 sticks, while they're big, they don't have very much write endurance.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
Yeah. It seems like what it
or
was.
they're just not meant to run 24/7. Probably both.
Yeah. One and the same, really.
Yeah. I 2 of them won't even do anything now. One of them says it's read only. You can read the data off of it, but you cannot write to it. Like you plug it into Windows to try it. I tried like the one I wanted to like reformat it and try to fill it and make sure it would work or whatever, and tried to repartition it. And Windows is like, sorry, that drive's read only.
Oh boy.
Although it's nice that it did that rather than just going until it failed. It's like you can still get your files back. You just can't write any more files to this. It was actually kind of like a graceful failure.
The one thing, here, I just grabbed this. I have this. I think I've talked to you about it before, but I don't think I've ever talked about it on the TechSNAP show.
Oh.
I have this this Zalman drive.
Is that one that can have ISOs on it and you can boot them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
I saw that somebody at BSDCan had that, and it was awesome because I was trying to do the FreeBSD install on a laptop that had a buggy BIOS that wouldn't boot off GPT.
Yeah.
And I was trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I borrowed that off of them to boot off of a bunch of times.
So what's neat is it's a 2.5-inch enclosure. So it's USB 3, and I have an SSD drive in there, and you can lock it in there. I don't have it locked in, so I can swap the drive out. And it's essentially really the magic is just this top part, and on here they have a LCD screen and a side toggle thing. It's just toggles up or down, and you use that to toggle between the different ISO images on the drive.
The ISO images.
Yeah.
It's
and when you click
every
down,
sysadmin's favorite tool.
When you click down, it emulates a USB CD-ROM of that ISO image, and you still get access to the rest of the storage on here. So you can actually you can emulate a live ISO and then write persistently to the SSD, which is really cool.
Yeah, so you especially with PCBSD's Life Preserver utility, you could boot the PCBSD ISO off of it to get into it and then restore the data from that external drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a complete like bare metal bootstrap recovery solution.
The only downside, it's probably no problem for you, is that NTFS. You can do FAT32.
Yep.
You can do FAT32, but then like certain ISO...
Your DVD ISOs will be too big and won't fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it do exFAT?
Well, you could put the drive in anything you want, but then the CD-ROM emulation doesn't work.
Yeah.
I guess I have read there's a way to flash the emulation software to do extended 3, but... So, that's the downside is you got to have NTFS. So I don't use it as much, but it's so handy to install from. And it's great for
partition it. Would it get confused if you partition it so you could have some NTFS for your images and then the rest of the space?
I might try that. You know what? Why not try that, actually? I think I will. And so, like, right now, I've got, like, just basic ISOs on there I can just plug in and I just choose from them, and it's good for troubleshooting.
It's very useful, though.
Mm-hmm. All right, our last question comes in from Mike. He says, I've been a fan from way back since before Last even had seasons. So he's been watching since before TechSNAP was a twinkle in our eye. I am in IT, and I'm a geek, and I work from home. So my core network has to work. I'm in the process of standing up a Zen server cluster with FreeNAS as the shared storage because, hey, who doesn't need a virtual server cluster? I chose Zen Server because it delivers more for free than ESXi, and I need to be able to run some Windows VMs, which had me eyeing a pfSense box as a candidate for virtualization. My current physical pfSense box has 3 NICs, though of course the WAN, the LAN, and like an optional work network interface that has access to my site-to-site VPN. I'm pretty sure I can make this work, but as a sanity check, how bad of an idea is it to virtualize a pfSense box? I'm thinking I could use VLANs on my main switch to make the magic happen. Thanks for any input. Keep up the good work. Alan, we get a lot of variations of this questions. Yep. This one's like with VLANs on the managed switch too, which is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. So the new pfSense 2.2 that just came out has even better support for Zen. And it works. It's a supported setup. And, technically best practices say you kind of want it separated. Basically, you have kind of weird networking if your internet connection has to go into the virtualizer, into the host, or into the guest that pfSense, do the stuff, and then come back out, and then go into your other VMs and so on. But, it doesn't quite give you that same delineation. But in general, it should be fine, yeah. My pfSense box, before I started doing TechSNAP and needed the performance and so on, at one point was actually a VM running on the free version of VMware Server on a Windows file server. So before I was using BSD as much, I had a Windows file server that was like my media center, and that's why it was Windows. And it had a bunch of drives full of all my media, and then a VMware install on that where I then ran pfSense. And the second network card that had the internet connection was a pass-through into the pfSense box where it would do the internet and then the other one was bridged back to the LAN interface. And so all my internet was actually going through a Windows box that was running pfSense in a VM. So it definitely works.
Yeah, and it seems to be something a lot of people in the TechSNAP audience are experimenting with.
Yeah, well, if you only can afford so much hardware, it makes sense to put as much as you can in the virtualization.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to...
don't put the FreeNAS in the virtualization, please. And yeah, the pfSense is fine to virtualize.
Yeah, and I've even considered doing it, and it makes a lot of sense. You invest a lot of money in a rig, you got some NICs, give it a shot.
In particular, the pfSense, you want it to be low power, so running it as an extra process on an existing machine saves a lot of power versus having a dedicated box where it's going to use like no CPU 24/7.
Yeah,
it's just going to be running and wasting power.
Okay, if you've got a question for us, go over to Jupiter Broadcasting, click the contact link, choose TechSNAP from that drop-down, or you can email us directly, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Or I really like it when you do the subreddit because we're a little better about catching those because we kind of visit that multiple times a week, techsnap.reddit.com. It's also a good spot to get answers from our super smart community who's a lot of times building and working with a lot of this really cool stuff and have some great experiences and often will offer advice. They don't have to, but a lot of them will jump in that subreddit from time to time and help people out. And with our feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still kind of want to go over them, give you some links to follow up on your own, and some of these links came from that subreddit over at techsnap.reddit.com. Now, this first one, I'm just going to play a quick clip. It is a 10-minute, about 9-minute, 16-second Vice documentary about a pretty fascinating Bitcoin mining operation in China. I'm going to play just a moment for you so those of you on the visual feed can see what it looks like. You'll hear some talking, and what you will definitely recognize if you've ever worked in a data center is that very familiar data center fan noise. Take a look at this massive, massive Bitcoin mining operation. Racks and racks, wires all over the floor. So this here's the general manager. He makes sure that everything stays safe. All the staff have food, power. Power is one of their biggest issues, obviously.
Look at that! There's just a channel full of
Ethernet.
Power cables running.
Power, Ethernet, whatever it is. Yeah, might be power. Yeah. So yeah, here's the rigs. They have 6 sites total, which is nuts, right? And they're doing their best to expand up to even more sites. And they have people that live in this mining operation 24/7. They have rooms there they stay in. And they're just going as fast as they can to get it. And it's just a really interesting look at this thing. I mean, they just got some warehouse room, and they just ended up like setting up racks in there. And
it reminds me of this data center we used to all in the industry make fun of because it was like tower PCs on bread racks in a room. That was their data center. And the problem they had was a little too often, as techs were working on stuff, they'd trip over power cables and knock people's machines offline.
Oh yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, I've had a few stories of those too. Hey, you caught this interesting BMW one. We've talked about the computer systems in cars before. This one though, it's like, I don't know. Maybe they're getting too much like smartphones and computers now. Like updates for my car. Are people going to do this now? Is this going to work?
BMW released an update for 2.2 million cars that they've sold because an attacker could pretend to be could do a rogue cell phone base station and intercept the traffic going back and forth to the car, which is all unencrypted. The fix makes it go over HTTPS and be encrypted. The problem was that the attacker could then make the car do things, including unlock the doors, roll down the windows, etc. So, your car could become haunted.
Well, and I wonder,
easily stolen if somebody with a cell phone could cause your car to just unlock itself.
I shouldn't even say this, but does the name Michael Hastings ring a bell to you at all? Is that no? Okay. Anyways,
off the top of my head.
So it says it appears the vulnerability revolved around an insecure transmission of data. Where they enabled HTTPS for future updates. So the problem was that they weren't doing SSL. That was the issue.
Yep.
That was the problem. Like,
and you could sniff the traffic and
that was
inject
really
your own commands.
That doesn't come on, guys. How are you going to build something into something as important as a motor vehicle like that and not think of that?
Well, the interesting thing is that's probably what protected them from Heartbleed, not using the SSL.
All right, got me there. Hey, Alan, maybe you can tell us about.
So the question is, now that they're using SSL, have they fixed Heartbleed? On all those
I hope
devices.
so. This might have been you. This article over on Motherboard, how a Canadian spy or spies infiltrated the internet core to watch what we all do online. You know about this? Have you read that? Have you read about
the internet
this?
doesn't have a single core.
There's a core according to the Motherboard. I don't know what they mean by that. I guess they would probably mean like maybe an ISP or something. 200. They say there's 200 locations around the world. Spies from Canada's Cyber Intelligence Agency have been monitoring huge volumes of global. So maybe they have like special, like important ISPs. They have.
I'm guessing more like internet exchanges.
Yeah. Okay.
But
yeah, here we go.
Those are
access to the backbone is achieved through a program called Eon Blue. According to the documents disclosed by Edward Snowden and published by Der Spiegel last month, the program is designed to track down threats, discover unknown threats, and provide defense at the core of the internet. That's what it says in the thing.
Yeah, I don't know if they're like a monitor port on the switches that run the backbones, but I don't know how they can just deal with that much traffic.
Maybe they're using the same system the NSA does, where they buffer it and then they just parse through it and then dump it.
Yeah, but like if you connected to
it's a lot of data.
The switches at the core of like the Toronto Internet Exchange, I think, are 10 or 40 gig ports, and so there's lots of traffic going back and forth, but no one monitor port could read it all.
No, I know.
And each port costs a lot of money. Somebody had to pay for that.
In the case of the NSA, they actually split it off at the fiber level.
That could help.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so this next one, I don't know what to make of this. I'd like to hear your take on it. Mozilla is going to enforce signing for Firefox extensions pretty soon.
Yeah. So
I don't really
Chrome
know.
already does this. Basically, if you want a Chrome extension, you have to get it from the Chrome
But
store.
then doesn't that mean that somebody has to approve every extension? Doesn't
Yes. So to get for Chrome says you have to go through the Google ecosystem. Firefox doesn't want to do that and force people to only get extensions from the Mozilla store, so that people can still do like custom internal extensions and so on.
Good.
But they're going in Firefox 39, they're going to start warning people against unsigned extensions, and then if you want to put your extension in the Microsoft or the Mozilla catalog, or if you just want people to be able to install it, you send it to them. They'll verify, go through the code of it, and make sure it's not doing anything bad or doing anything it doesn't say that it does.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will sign it and send it back to you so that you can host it yourself still.
Sounds pretty practical.
So much better solution than Google's, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And good because
much more like open solution.
Much more Mozilla of an approach, really. I heard this story. TurboTax has suspended state e-filing citing big spike in fraud.
Yeah, so TurboTax was asked by the governments of like 8 states to stop allowing people to file their taxes online because they've got a lot of fake tax returns apparently.
Oh boy!
And then Krebs has pictures there. Apparently, somebody's selling access to something that they managed to get from somewhere. It's not clear what's exactly going on yet, but problems with tax season, it seems.
Yeah, they say they did an audit and no indications of a breach at Intuit.
Yeah. But, now it could just be that people use weak passwords or something, but it definitely seems like something fishy is going on. And I love the fake logo somebody made up there. TurboTax, do your taxes before someone else does.
Couldn't be the tax season without a cyber problem now.
Well, that's fairly new for tax season.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. This is the new tax. This is going to be the new thing every tax season. All right, so Trend Micro or Trend Labs over at trendmicro.com is asking, is the anonymous attacking internet exposed gas pump monitoring system in the U.S.? What the hell does that headline even mean? Is the anonymous internet exposed gas pump monitoring system in the...
You're reading words that aren't there.
What is anonymous attacking? Oh, anonymous. Oh, the group anonymous.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I was thinking like anonymous gas machines. Like what?
The word "the" and a bunch of. Anyway,
well, I'm a spaz.
We talked about the gas pump monitoring systems being vulnerable the other day.
Yeah.
Now they found one where the name of the system's been renamed to like "We Are Legion" or whatever Anonymous's tagline is. And so they're like, it's like, yes, gas pumps are vulnerable. We've known this.
Yeah.
Of course, some kid went in there and renamed one of them. And, people should fix their gas pumps and your gas monitoring systems.
I love the idea that I totally butchered that so badly that I thought it was like anonymous gas pumps are attacking people. I'm like, what the hell? That's hilarious. Okay, and we got one more here from Krebs. Fishers pounds on the Anthem breach we talked about last week.
Yes. So the healthcare provider, insurance provider, getting hacked, and so people are getting cold phone calls, emails, everything. They're basically everybody's out there. All the bad guys are out there trying to trick you into giving them the information. So it's like, give us your personal information, and we'll tell you if you're one of the accounts that was hacked. It's like, well, you are now. But also they're doing it over the phone and such. Rather than just email phishing. They're doing phone phishing and so on too. And this is that concept we've talked about before of trend jacking, jumping on whatever the hot news is in order to fool people.
Yeah.
What's really funny is Krebs posted this article with this one example of an attack, right? You're showing it right now, where it's this example email that was sent out. Mm-hmm. And somebody sent it to Anthem, and so Anthem actually set up a phone line where they're saying, we haven't contacted anybody yet. If you're getting contacted, it's fake, which is really going to cause confusion when they actually have to go out and contact people. But Krebs later got a follow-up and found out that phishing email that was sent, that's very, very well done, was actually by one of those companies that sends them out, and if you click the link, you get educated on not doing the phishing.
Oh.
It's actually, I forget the name of it. It's at the bottom of the article.
Right, yes. We've talked about them before, too.
Yeah. And Krebs is like, full disclosure, they actually pay to advertise on my blog. But so it was actually one that was sent out to a bunch of people
before.
inside a company.
Does that sound right? No before? Yeah.
No before. So the company paid KnowBe4 to send phishing scams to all of its users, and if any of the users click through, then they got educated, and they get marked and be like, oh well, this person obviously fell for phishing. We need to teach them not to do that so that our computers aren't at risk.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that somebody didn't fall for it, but saw it and did the right thing, which is forward the spoof email to the real company so that they can make sure their customers know not to follow for the fake, right? Like if you get one from PayPal, you send it to spoof@paypal.com and they deal with it. Right? They try to get the fake site taken down and so on.
Yep.
Well, he did that for Anthem, and it turns out, and eventually got back to, it's like, oh yeah, that was actually one that we engineered to teach people not to fall for them. And this guy treated it like it was a real one and did the right thing.
Yeah. And kind of on the same line, part 2 to this story, looks like we might have some deets on when the breach may have started.
Yes. In doing some digging, it looks like Anthem may have actually been breached since April of 2014, meaning it went on for a lot longer than they thought.
Ho, boy. Yeah, no kidding. Wow, yeah. That's...
And they have some indication that it belongs to one of these Chinese APT groups, and everybody's throwing around names like Deep Panda.
Yeah, I see that. Deep Panda. Gosh, jeez.
But they have this graphic here where they're showing they've apparently breaking into Mongolian government things and universities and so on.
April. Wow. That's a year, Alan. That's
quite interesting.
That's quite nuts.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I had to shake my head on this one because this could actually impact our audience. This next story. It's only a bug. They're going to work on it. But Samsung Smart TVs are inserting unwanted ads into your own streaming content. So if you like watching something off of Plex, the Samsung TV is inserting a silent 30-second Pepsi commercial.
Silent?
Yeah, because it's a bug. It's not supposed to be happening, so like it's not all set up. But so like you go to start something off your local network. You don't even have to have TV service, and it first plays an ad from the TV. How egregious is that? Now the smart TVs are coming with built-in ads. So Samsung is working to push out a patch to fix this, but they don't even have the patch written yet, and then they got to get people to update. So that's a big problem.
Well, that's one way to get people to update.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like put in a fail-safe into the TV. If you haven't patched in 6 months, we're going to start annoying you with ads so that you'll patch to remove the ads.
Right. Now, here's a little workaround. This might disable other stuff, so you have to keep this in mind. But if you go into your settings and you do not agree to the Yahoo privacy notice, then this stuff gets turned off because this is part of the Yahoo platform.
It's using the Yahoo ad platform. So if you opt out of it, then it will disable all the ads.
Yeah, but it might turn off some other features too.
Yep.
So that's a temporary.
It's interesting that Samsung has got a revenue model that involves making money off showing you ads.
And by interesting, you mean horrible.
Yeah.
I do not want my TV playing ads for me. I don't care if what I'm watching has ads in it. That's their choice. But my TV, like off my local media, that's one of the reasons I watch that.
In particular, if people are using it to watch TechSNAP, we don't want them to think that we're getting paid for that ad because we're very much not.
Well, and then would the Jupiter Broadcasting audience think that we took a Pepsi sponsorship? Like, I wouldn't want them thinking that. And so I don't like it at all. Yeah. And it kind of demonstrates.
But it's hilarious that it's broken where you don't get the audio for the ad, so you just a weird thing happening when you're trying to watch TV.
Yeah. I've got a TV that has the Yahoo apps on there.
My parents have a smart TV, and it has some advantages. Like you can just plug a USB stick in the side and play stuff off of it, and it has Ethernet, and it can just find stuff on Samba shares.
Yep.
But at the same time, my setup here is a 40-inch LCD monitor that doesn't have any features at all.
That's nice.
It just has. It doesn't actually. It's so old. It doesn't even have an HDMI feed. It has DVI. So it just has a DVI connection. I have an HDMI to DVI cable. So the DVI end goes in the TV, and the HDMI end goes in the NUC.
Perfect.
And the NUC does all the work.
So the TV that we have that has the Yahoo apps on it. Get this. And this is a Vizio TV, and if anybody in the TechSNAP audience can help me with this, I would really appreciate it. So I just want to say, to the smart apps thing, one thing I do like about the smart TVs is when you get it home and you put it up on the wall or whatever, like it just does stuff. Like I don't even have TV service, and I can still watch Netflix and Plex. And anyway, so that's nice. But it uses Wi-Fi to connect to the studio network. And from what we can tell, and I've gone through all of the setting screens, and maybe I missed it, but from what we can tell by looking at Wi-Fi analyzers, it would appear that the Vizio television has a Wi-Fi. It is transmitting a Wi-Fi base station access point on a 2.4 gigahertz spectrum on like channel 6 or something. And it's adding to the massive Wi-Fi noise on channel 6 that we already have in this area. It's just like 2.4 gigahertz is destroyed here. Like even using like mice and stuff like that are on 2.4 doesn't work very well. It's really it's really bad here. And so the fact that the TV's doing it, A, I don't know if people can join that, and B, I don't want any Wi-Fi transmissions, so I don't know how to turn it off. I don't know why it's on.
The Samsung my parents bought, the Wi-Fi was a module that you had to buy separately, and the store threw it in as part of the sale or whatever, but it's actually not hooked up.
That's nice.
We don't have the Wi-Fi hooked up because they didn't have Wi-Fi at their house, actually.
I wonder if...
because of the drop ceiling and I could run cables everywhere, they have Ethernet in every room, and they've never actually used Wi-Fi.
I might, if I plugged in the Ethernet, it might turn off the Wi-Fi, but I don't know. It's a tough call because... I want to keep the Ethernet for other things, so we'll see. But if anybody out in the audience knows, I'd love to have it.
In the room here, where I'm in my computer room upstairs, I only have 2 Ethernet drops. And I was like, well, I have my computer, the NUC, and the laptop, and I actually really would like my computer to have dual Ethernet going for the lags and so on. So the second port actually comes out of the wall and goes into a 5-port switch.
Nice.
And then hook everything up to that.
You know what? That's what I should do, is I should put a switch out there.
Yeah,
because I've only got 2 Ethernet ports, and I'm going to use the second Ethernet port to send HDMI signal from the studio out to the TV in the living room, so people that are visiting can watch a live program feed of what we're recording in the studio.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that, and then the second one, you can have the other one actually do like the TV and a Roku and the laptop with the person sitting at the machine or whatever.
Right.
A whole bunch of things off, and a little 5 or 8 port switch. Gigabit ones are super cheap now
and silent.
Yep.
That's exactly good thinking. Gonna do that. Probably just mount it to the back of the TV. Even it's got like little mount spots on it. All right. Well,
that's what I love about the NUC, the little
mount. You could just put a NUC back there. Huh.
Like it comes with the bracket already.
Yeah, it does.
You didn't even have to buy it.
Yeah, it does. I was thinking the first computer I'll probably put out there would probably be a Steam machine, but I'm not sure.
Right.
Okay.
The problem with my NUC has the VESA mount, but my TV is so big, it's got the bigger VESA mount.
Oh.
So it doesn't fit.
Oh, bummer.
Right, because my TV is like a commercial one designed for like the display at an airport with the flight lists on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got like the BNC twist lock connectors, and it's got a complete set of slave outputs where you put a second TV back to back with it, so you only have to run one set of signal to it.
That's nice.
It has no built-in speakers.
Right.
And so on.
Probably exactly what I wanted. I really didn't want a TV that was smart. I just wanted a display.
But the smart TV is great, especially with, wife or kids or whatever. You just hear movies on a USB stick, play.
Well, especially since we don't have TV service. So.
Yep, exactly.
I want feedback. So everybody go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. Click that. Go to the TechSNAP thing. Fill in your stuff and send it in. Get your questions in here. Let's start getting more questions into the TechSNAP show. I got a couple more emails I didn't get to this week. I'm going to double check those, and we might include those in next week's show. So if yours didn't get answered this week, I apologize, but we should be on it next week. Also, the subreddit, techsnap.reddit.com. Great place for questions or content for the show. And last but not least, wouldn't it be cool if you could join us live? First of all, it's way more show. Whether we keep going during the segment breaks where we stop and play the crazy music, well, the show goes on during those times, sometimes for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So you could join us live and chat. And today, it was like a impromptu AMA for Alan in the chat room.
Yep. Chris went to get a drink. So
yeah, I went to go get a Diet Pepsi, and I come back and it's an AMA, and that went on for a little while. This is kind of fun because you also get to help us title the show and then vote on that and give us feedback as we're doing it. So that's at jblive.tv, and we do this show 1 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC.
Boom, boom, boom. Also check out jblive.info for the audio version if you're on the go or sitting at your desk and don't have access to video. And that'll pretty much wrap it up right there. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.